We're going to start because our time is so limited. So let's start first with your very early years in your family. You were not yet 5 when Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, starting World War II. Before we turn to the war and the Holocaust, tell us a little bit about your family and your community from what you know in those years before the war began.
We had a very nice life. And the family was always together celebrating the holidays. And we were very happy till the German invaded Poland.
Before we talk about that, Sylvia, tell us a little bit about your mom and dad. I mean, for one thing, you told me that they loved theater, they loved dressing up. Your mother liked silent movies.
Yes, my mother loved the American silent movies, and she was a terrific dancer. Every Friday night they went dancing, and they loved to be dressed up all the time. And I can see on my pictures how nice they dressed me and my sister. And I had very lovable mother and father.
Your father had served in the Polish army, hadn't he?
Yes, yes.
Do you know anything about that period of his life?
No.
Okay.
That was before he got married.
Before he got married, okay. How large was your extended family?
I had many uncles and aunts, and we all lived almost in the same area.
So a large extended family living close by.
Yes.
And you had said to me that yours was a very close family. Everybody, you lived close, but you were also closely knit.
Yes, yes. We help each other. And we love each other, yeah.
And Dora, just a little bit about Dora. She was 7 years older than you,
Yes.
so she probably remembers, she remembered a great deal about those early years.
Actually, my sister didn't talk about it. So when I needed some information about the book, she didn't remember as much as I did, because she put it away. And once you stop talking, I also did it. But when I arrived here in Washington, and we started to write the book, things came back to me.
And we're going to hear, hopefully, many, not all, but many of the things that you were able to write about in the book. As we noted earlier when we were showing the slides, within 7 days of Germany occupying Poland, they occupied your city of Lodz, and they unleashed the horrors of the Holocaust on your family. And there are nearly 250,000 Jews that lived in Lodz. Tell us what you can about what happened to your family when the Germans occupied Lodz, but before they put you into the ghetto. What was that period like? Do you know?
This period I don't remember before, but I remember being in the ghetto, and I remember the barbed wires, and soldiers were standing all around guarding us, so we couldn't escape on the Polish side. And it was very crowded.
Before we go to the ghetto, just a couple of comments. In your book, you wrote about when the Germans first came in, you and your family left in a buggy.
The German decided to make the city of Lodz a German city, and all the Jews had to leave. So my father hired a horse and buggy, and it was winter time, and we went to Warsaw with our uncle and his 2 children. And so we were 2 families with 2 children. And when we arrived in Warsaw, everything was bombed. The houses, we couldn't find a place to stay. And that was the best decision, one of the best decisions my father made, to return to Lodz. And when we returned to Lodz, then they decided to make the ghetto for working. That city had many factories. There wasn't not much bombing. The factories stayed intact, and they decided to put the people to work. And if you were, depends on your profession, and they assigned you to make clothes if you were a tailor, if you were a shoemaker. My father, they asked him what you were doing before the war. He says he worked with flour and sugar. So the good part, and they made him deliver flours. They were bakeries to bake the bread. Of course, the flour was very poor.
Mm-hmm.
It was not really the good flour, but we were happy to have. Working with flour, sometimes it spilled a little bit, so all the people used to grab a little bit, and at the end of the day, the whole group who worked together divided, so everybody could have a little bit of flour. So that helped with the hunger.
And when they did that, they were not supposed to do that, right?
No.
So that was a clandestine thing
Yes.
that they did.
They wear a white uniform, and they had packets made special. You only could take a little bit
Just
because they
bit.
weigh it. It was, and only very strong men could do it. You had to carry a bag of 100 kilo flour to take it off from the buggy and bring it to the bakery.
When you first entered the ghetto, when you were first forced to go in there with your family and all the other Jews that were forced in there, you shared with me that as you went into it, you remember holding Dora's hand. Right?
Yeah, she always watched me, but I don't have recollection going into.
Okay.
It may be we lived there before, because some of the streets people live, and some people didn't have to move, and the people who were far on certain section, what the German didn't want you moved. And after a while, they put another family with a little girl who became my best friend, Itka, in our apartment. So we live 7 people in a room and a kitchen.
One room and a kitchen,
Yes.
7 of you in there.
Yes.
And Itka, and then you got another friend. You had
Yes.
2 friends, right?
Once the parents went to work, the children were left alone. And we were small children. In the beginning, my sister was the babysitter, but then she was old enough. They took even 10 years old to go to factories work, maybe younger. But then I was left alone, so we got in one of the girls. The other little girl lived just across. Her name was Hava, and she was, I found out, here at the museums, and she was 2 years older than me. So she was the oldest. She had a little brother, and we stayed in that apartment till our parents came from work. And all the toys what we had, I had a beautiful doll and carriage, what I remember, because I have a picture with them, and everything was sold. In the beginning, we could exchange with the Polish people. We only wanted food, so we gave the toys, clothes. At night, you made the exchange. After a while, we didn't have anything
So
else.
you would swap a shirt for a little bit of food until you ran out of
shirt,
clothes.
we had to give. My father, I remember, told me, he gave a suit and 2 pair of pants just for a pound of butter. You had to give a lot to have.
To get a pound of butter.
Yeah. And that was the last time what I ate butter, and I don't remember the taste of it. Many foods after the war, I didn't know what they were.
What work was your mother and Dora made to do?
Yeah, Dora went to a factory with my mother. They were make lady undergarment.
And who were they making them for?
For the German, everything was sent to Germany. They received a little soup and a slice of bread, and the soup was mostly water. But if you're hungry, everything tastes good. And also we had rations to get food for the week. And you had to go to certain stores. You had a little booklet and wait in line. And sometimes by the time your turn came, the food was out.
Gone.
Yeah.
You wrote in your book,
Yes.
you said, this was about the winter of 1941, you said, winter, quote, winter erases whole families it also erased the vegetables that
Yes.
we grew.
We could make little garden, and in the backyard, the courtyard had cement, but we ripped out the cement to have and to plant. And the only thing I could remember my father planted during the summer is potatoes, because we didn't have seeds, and beets. I don't know how the beets must, and we were happy. In the summer we had a little bit more food. The winters were terrible because they stopped giving us wood to make our apartment warm. We had ovens. You had to make a fire and cook. And little by little we used furniture.
For fuel?
For fuel, yes. And then it was getting harder and harder to... We had the food, being hungry, mostly the people thought about it. When you're hungry, how to make different recipe, what they gave us. I remember whatever they gave us, you had to find a way how to fix it, because you didn't have, you just had some oil, but the oil was such a poor quality. I thought it was the oil what they used for the machine.
And that's what you had for cooking?
Yes, for cooking, just to have a little grease. But people were getting thinner and thinner on the street, and I could see people dropping on the street. And there were children, older children, who had a job to pick up the dead people and on horse and buggies and bury them.
The children were doing that.
Sometimes children, sometimes growing up.
Sylvia, as terrible as the conditions were that you've just given us a glimpse of in the Lodz Ghetto, they of course became so much worse once the Nazis began deporting Jews out of the ghetto and sending them to a killing center at Helno. In January of 1942, as you turned 7, the Nazis were really intent on getting all the kids and taking them. Tell us how, what your life was like once those deportations, especially when they were after the kids.
That was my worst time, when they decided and the parents have to give up the children. But they made it sound so good. And we are going to camp to Germany, and the children gonna have food. Give away your children here. You're going to work. The children are staying by themselves, and there is no food. And some people believe they were, because they couldn't see their children starving. But I had a very courageous father. He wouldn't give me away. Each time they came to get the children, he used to hide me. And my worst memory was the last time he couldn't find places anymore. So he decided there was a cemetery behind our backyard. There was a big wall, and he decided to hide me on the cemetery. And this was a raid at night, and I remember waking up and screaming that I don't want to die. I remember saying, and we really didn't know that we're going to die, because they said they're going to send us to camp and we're going to have a good time there. And my father grabbed me. It was during the night. They barricaded certain streets because they couldn't get the children. So they arrived. We didn't know that night they're going to come. Sometimes we knew, but this time we didn't. So my father grabbed me, and we went down, I think, the window, and we climbed that wall, and he made a hole and put me in the hole and covered me.
In the cemetery?
In the cemetery, and covered me with grass. And we stayed there more than 24 hours. Till my sister came and told us that they are gone and you can come out.
Do you remember how frightened you were?
Yes, because I was already at that time, that was I was like 8 or maybe older.
When that happened.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And this incident left me for life. Years and years after, I had this dream. Like, it came very often. I lived in France 10 years, and all to that time, maybe once a month, I had this dream of I'm staying in the hall, and the German, I look up, is staying with a gun, and my father stayed next, and I said, he's killing me, and I wake up, and it was the same dream. Till I came to America in 57, for some reason the dream stopped.
But you
So
had
that
it for
was like,
all those many years.
but I lived always with fear. I knew I'm in America, and I knew there were no German, but I always was afraid to stay by myself.
Sylvia, you also shared that I believe you lost your friend Hava. She disappeared. Then you lost your other friend, Itka.
That was when they decided in 1944 everybody has to leave.
Okay.
And they left, I remember very well, they left by train, and they only could take a little knapsack and some water. And Hava and her mother were very sick, and my father helped them to take them to the train. And I know she didn't make it. Itka, I don't know. I remember Hava's second name, so I put a memorial in Miami. There is a monument for children. It's a hand children are climbing to escape, and I put her name.
For Hava.
Because I knew, I found out the date she is born, and I knew the second name. Itka, I couldn't remember her second name, so I couldn't, you cannot give just the first name. And I remember them well. We were very good friends, and we played together. What did we play? A lady made from sheets little dolls, and from a pencil she made the eyes and clothes. And all the 3 little girls who were babysitting the little brother who was sick in the crib, we played with this. There were no schools, and children didn't learn. So my sister, who was older, she taught me the alphabet and the numbers and how to sign my name.
So Dora was helping to educate you.
Yes, because she was very bright, Dora.
Yeah.
And she helped me to learn at least the basic. So now we are coming when everybody...
I'm going to ask you one more thing.
Yes.
You described in your book, you referred to the deportations as wedding invitations. In the book, that was the phrase that was used. Somebody got a wedding invitation. It was the order, to be deported.
And once some people wanted to go because the situation in the ghetto was so bad, they thought maybe they're going to go to other factories. That's what the German propaganda announced. We're going to send you to factories, you're going to have more food. We had no idea what was happening in Germany. We didn't have no radios. They took everything away. First our valuable, and then one family, they found the radio, and they took the whole family, the grandma, the grandpa, the parents, and they killed them right there.
Because they had a radio.
The radio. So people were afraid. If people had radios, they just broke them in pieces and threw them away. So we didn't know what was happening in Germany. But if you don't know, my father felt he didn't know what was happening, so it scared him not knowing. So he preferred as long as he could stay. Luckily, they needed people to clean up the belonging from the people who left. I'm talking 1944.
So the people that were deported, they wanted to clean up all their belongings afterwards.
The German wanted, they were beautiful furniture, people left, and clothes, and everything was sent to Germany. There was one train who was still working, and the people, like my father and mother, were chosen to stay and do that work. But when he looked, the German leader, maybe you heard his name, I hate to say his name, Bibov, he just looked at me and he said, she cannot work, and used very bad language, and you have to go. Left was to go, right was to stay. But my father, and they put the 800 people in 2 factories.
So this is the 800 remaining Jews
Yes.
after
the ghetto became a ghost town.
ghost town.
Everybody left. And it was, I remember the summertime, I used to see the curtains, people left the window open. It was, you couldn't walk on the street because it was empty. But every morning, the 800 people went to work, assigned streets, went to clean up, put them on horse and buggy, and took the belonging to a train. Now, we're supposed to go. But my father went to this factory and he saw there was a basement there. And he decided, I was already a big girl, he says, I am not going, my name is on the list, and I would put my Sylvia in the basement. And his friend heard about, and they looked at him, he's crazy, you're all gonna get killed. He says, I have a feeling, a premonition to do this. I cannot tell you what to do, but if you want to, you can put your child. So his brother, my cousin, who lives now in Toronto, Jack, his father listened to my father and he put him, and he was a younger child than me, and I was watching over him and other people. So I actually didn't remember how many children, maybe 11, just that maybe 13. So I put in the book 12. And we stayed there, and every morning they went to work, and they used to find, it was in the summer, so the gardens had vegetable. They created a kitchen in the camp, the women cooked, and in the winter, in the summer, we had all those vegetables, and used to find in the rooms any food they brought back to the camp, and the women cooked. After a while, the German found out about those 12 children, and they
that were hidden in the cellar.
They came to the cellar and told us to follow them in that house where the German lived, and they talked. I couldn't understand at that time what they were saying. After a while, they sent us back to the parents. And the parents were so happy to see the children back. Little did we know that they were planning to kill everyone. A couple of days after, they took all the men and on the cemetery and dig 3 big holes. And the men knew when they came from work, they were sad that this is for us. But still, my father couldn't believe it. They're going to kill at one time. At that time, we were only 745. Some people passed away. And we could hear already the bombing falling. And we were happy. We saw little tiny plane in the sky, like toys. We didn't know from what country they were. Then slowly they were coming down and the bombs started to fall. We could hear. So one day, the bombs were really falling close. So everybody decided to go from the 2 factories to lay on the ground.
While the bombs are falling.
The bombs were falling. We thought maybe they would hit the building and we're going to lay. So we lay on our stomach for some reason. And I know next to my mother, and the bombs were falling all around. Suddenly, we saw this light up from the sky came, like it was daytime. We found out later on the Russia liberated us, so one of the colonel came to our camp. He saw all those people. He was in the plane. Who are those people with the? And we were wearing the yellow star in the back. And they realized, and they were Jewish people, and they
So
didn't
this is
throw.
one of the pilots in the
Yes,
Russian planes.
they never. That's why they didn't throw on those factories bombs, because they realized that we were Jewish people laying there.
I'm going to go back just a little bit, if I can, Sylvia. I want
Yes.
You told me about your father rescuing a cousin of yours, Mina.
Yes.
That is such an astonishing thing. Tell
But
it-
he helped her father and another man. My father wasn't the only person.
Okay.
They needed a paper to walk on the street. It was when they took the children, they put them in the hospital. It was a big building, and from that hospital, trucks were coming and takes them to the train. And my aunt couldn't find a finding. They found it and they took away. And that was the only daughter. And she came to our apartment crying, "Help, help me," to my father. They took Mina, and he got papers so they could walk on the street. How do you get to the hospital? The Germans see you. It's a ghost town.
Right.
So the father knew somebody who was cleaning the chimney. And she was my age, but she was very tiny little girl. And they went to the building. He said, "I have to clean the chimney." And through the chimney, they took her out in a basket. And she lives now in close to New York City, and she survived. But in 1944, they were sent out with all the people to leave the ghetto, and they really could stay with the 800 people, but they decided maybe it's better over there. Luckily, when they arrived in Germany, I don't know, not in Auschwitz, because they would take her away. They assigned my aunt and her with gypsies, in a camp with gypsies, and gypsies were allowed to keep one child. So that's how she survived. It wasn't a long time when she was liberated by the Americans. I think American or English, I am not sure.
Thanks for telling us about that.
Yeah.
Before you were liberated, Sylvia, when you were describing in the cellar with the other 11 children,
Yes.
what do you remember what it was like for you to be in the cellar with just 10 other or 11 other kids while your parents are being forced to do
We
the work
had
they were
to
doing?
keep quiet, and the parents were bringing us the food down in the evening when they came from work. And it wasn't easy because some children couldn't stay quiet. But we were not there a long time.
Right.
I don't even remember weeks. Right away the German found us.
Will you tell us before that before we go back to that,
Yes.
at some point in the cellar, you decided to come out. And this is the story with a pair.
Oh, this is after they found us.
Okay.
They decided to put us to work. And the German lived in a place when there were gardens and there were trees, pears. So they said I was almost 10, and the other children were maybe 9, 10, 11, 12. We're going to work. First, they made us bring up coals from the cellar to warm their
This was
oven.
your job as kids.
So
yeah.
my job that was not an easy job because it was winter time. But then they said, pick the pears. And the pears, as we picked, we could eat. But I saw other children taking a pear or two, hiding behind their clothes. And I said, I would like to bring back to the camp for my sister. I was petrified if they opened my coat, in my pocket if they found the payers, but finally I decided to do it. So many children are writing me letters when they read my book. I have hundreds and hundreds of letters, and I have even a picture, a young student draw the tree, how I picked the pay and hide the pay, how brave I was to steal that payer from my sister.
And kids are writing you about
yes,
that.
Yes,
Absolutely.
The payer, mostly, it's very important to them, that time when I took that payer.
And also, I would like you to share with the audience, before the bombing occurred, I believe, and before you were liberated, while you were still hiding, you ended up hiding very close to where the Germans' offices were, where they were headquartered. Tell us about that.
Yes, when the men dig the holes, we knew they're gonna kill us next day. So the person who was in charge of the 800 people opened the door and they said, "Go hide yourself." Where can you hide yourself? It was January, snow up to the knee,
and horribly
cold,
brutal winter.
and empty houses. Yeah. So my father decided, he was very, very smart to do this, to choose the house across from the German. He figured they're gonna go house to house, and that's the last house they're gonna search.
The one right next to their headquarters.
And we were there maybe 3-4 days. I remember my mother only could take one bread, and we were cold, and we couldn't make any fire because the German would see the smoke. So we stayed quiet there, and the bombs were falling louder and louder, and we knew that any day maybe we would be liberated. And then one day we saw a lady walking, a blonde lady on the street, and the other people says, "Let's go out, we are free." But my father said, "Let's wait, maybe she's a decoy, maybe we are not, and the German want us to come out." But it was the liberation, and we came out. As we came out, the bombs were falling, we almost got killed. My father managed to get a horse and buggy, and we went back to our camp, but our clothes were there. And we were staying on the street, watching the Polish people carrying our belongings from, we didn't have time to clean up all the apartment. So they were carrying the clothes or some furniture, and it didn't occur to us, go back right away to see if you can. We had nothing, but we were so happy to be liberated, and some of the Russia major and a colonel came and talked to us, and whatever they had some chocolate, they saw the few children, they gave us the chocolate, and all the food what they had, they gave it to us. And they said, "You are the first Jewish people what we liberated, but now we're going to take Berlin." And that colonel was very worried because it was very hard to take Berlin. Many soldiers died, and he was telling, "I have 2 children in Moscow, and I hope I can go back." I remember this well.
You remember him saying that?
Yes, he was very nice.
Sylvia, you explained to me when we first talked that as happy as you were with liberation, you said people even began, you got chocolates, people began to dance, but you said the jubilation was short-lived when your father, and you put this in your book, told you the horrible news. Do you remember your father said, "There are no Jews left"? And it completely...
That's what we thought.
Yep.
That's what
he thought.
Everybody thought we're the only one left. Everybody started to cry. We're the only one. But we didn't know what was happening in other countries.
Right.
Till we saw, after we found an apartment, the Russia said, "You can get any apartment." Some German lived in that city. So they left, and you can open, ask the concierge, and you're allowed to live there. And we found a nice place with nice furniture.
When you went back to your own apartment to see what was left,
It was nothing left.
you found, we saw some photographs.
Yeah, the photographs.
Those few photographs.
Yeah.
Tell us about the photographs.
The photographs were laying on the floor. We had 2 big pictures, my sister and I, because the frame were so beautiful, they took, and they must have just throw out.
Through the
but
photograph on the
the
ground.
photographs were on the floor, and they stepped, so some were damaged. They are right here at the Holocaust Museum. Museum gave me very nice copies. And my son is still angry at me why I gave away the original.
But now that's the reason you have those few photographs.
Yes, we couldn't find. The furniture were gone, everything was gone. The Polish people took the furniture. Because as we were cleaning, we didn't want to clean our own place. We left them. So maybe after the war, we could come back there. But we never went back to the live in that ghetto. We could live wherever we wanted.
But you ended up deciding to not stay in Poland for very long. Tell us why. Why?
We wanted. My father started a good business.
So he started to work again.
And he opened up his own business,
Okay.
and was selling wholesale sugar and flour, and we did very well. We got new clothes, we had food. Everything was going pretty good till some people started again coming at night and killing us, certain Polish people. And we finally, I remember my father was saying, we survived and now we're gonna get killed. So we decided one night to leave that apartment, but we couldn't take a suitcase. We were afraid that the Polish people would see us and can report to the other people who were doing those bad things, and the concierge watched you coming in and out. So we just put clothes on our and coats, and we hid money. We had quite a bit of money by that time in our clothes, and put maybe double blouse, and took the pictures and papers into the clothes because it was full.
And that's all you took, though,
that's
nothing
all.
else.
We couldn't. My father said if they see us carrying a package, because in the evening that was the style. People went for walks, and we went to the train station. It was already dark, and we went to the border of Germany. And we were going to go to Germany, and we hired someone with a truck who was delivering gasoline. And he hit us behind, and he went through the woods. So
he hid you in the back of a gasoline tank truck, right?
We were 5 people. Our uncle also lived with us. And he didn't go through the road, so it was very bumpy. Since then, when I have motion sickness, and the smell is horrible. Always.
You said to me that getting gas at a gas station brings back, makes you nauseous. Even to this day, the smell
I
of that.
remember that. And we arrived in American side. Berlin was divided, and there were displaced camp, and the soldiers MP directed us where to go, and they gave us shots for good, not to be sick. And that was a place where they assigned you where to go. And then they assigned us a place to go near Munich, and we stayed there. And that's where the school, they made schools there.
In the displaced persons camp.
And we had plenty food, and even some people, clothes were sent, people from America. Jewish people sent lots of their clothes, and life started again. There were dances, there were theaters, but my father became restless. He says, how many years are we going to live in one room? But it was a large room, and
in a large displaced persons camp or a refugee camp, essentially.
Yes, yeah. And the place where we stayed were Nazis, the schools for them. So we had showers. It was quite modern. Mm-hmm. Some of the camps were not as nice. Right. And we found out we had, my mother had a brother in Paris, France, and my parents made the decision to go to France, but we hired someone to take us. We had to pay someone, a young French man, to take us to the borders. And this time we were walking. When I watch television, I see the refugees walking. It reminds me we were walking like this. And we arrived in Paris and went on a visit. We stayed with my uncle for a while. And then it was starting a new language. And I went to French school, and the children were so nice. The teachers were so nice. I was the only child who was not speaking French there. And I was very embarrassed because in order to learn how to read, they had to put me for a couple hours with 6 years old. But they put me in a classroom with my age, the grade what I should have been. But I learned, you're young, you learn the language. Right. It's a beautiful language. And I was very happy. I made friends. And another tragedy happened. My mother dies from cancer when I was 16. And my oldest sister... While you're
still in Paris?
In Paris. And my oldest sister was already in America with her husband. Because they had a relative in America. His mother was actually born in America, but the parents went back, and she had lots of relatives. They sent papers, and she loved it the minute she arrived, and she started to talk to us to send papers for us. And in between, my mother passed away, so she came back to take care of me because I was very, very sick, depression, to losing my mom at 16 after we survived.
After you've been through so much.
And it took a long time, 5 years, to get a visa because we were born in Poland. And in 1957, my father and I came to America.
And you had to start over again?
Over another language.
Another language,
yes.
And learn.
Yes. And I am very happy that I came to America. This is the best thing what we did, and I think America is still the best country to live.
Sylvia, I think we have time for some questions from our audience. And if we don't have questions from the audience, I have many more for you. Okay. But I think we're going to turn to our audience and see if you have some questions. We do have some time for that. We're going to ask you to please remain through the question and answer period, because to close our program, Sylvia will share with us some last thoughts for today, so please stay with us. We have microphones on both sides of the aisle. We ask that you wait till you have the microphone to ask your question. If you can, make it as brief as you can, and I will do my best to repeat the question just to make sure that we all hear it the right way, we hope, and then Sylvia will respond to your question. And so we welcome anybody who's on the internet, if it's possible to ask a question. I think we've got a question. We'll take that one first, coming in from, is this one from Allen, Texas?
Yes.
It is, okay. Allen, Texas, from the Grace M. Reed Elementary School. And they can hear us, they can see us, they can see you in Allen, Texas.
Okay, one of the students wants to know, how long did it take you to feel comfortable sharing your experiences from the Holocaust?
So one of the students at the elementary school is asking, how long did it take you to feel comfortable enough to share what you went through during the Holocaust?
It took me a long time. I am here 60 years in America, but I started, I would say, like 5 years ago, speaking to children. It was easier for me to speak to children, and 6th and 7th graders in Montgomery County in Maryland. And then I spoke to groups of women. Little by little, I was asked to volunteer at the museum, and I said I will try. And I was at the information desk in the beginning, and now I'm sitting at the desk, and people come to me to hear my story. So it took me a long time. For many years, I didn't talk about it.
Did your parents talk about it? Well, your mother, you passed away when you were young.
No, not really. I think in 1970s, the first movie came out about the Holocaust, and my son was a teenager. I think he was 16, and he watched with me, and then he started to ask questions. He knew a little bit about, but he didn't know exactly the story. But after he asked the story, and believe me now, he knows more than I what was happening in all those countries in Europe.
Okay, let's
Thank
see
you.
if anybody in our audience has a question. See if there's a brave soul to come forward. All right, we have a question there, I see in the back.
I just wanted to know, do you have any other family that was out of the country, other than Poland?
Did you have any other family that were who survived and went to other countries? Who else in your family survived? Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
No, I had this uncle in Paris, and I had another uncle in Romania, and he survived.
You survived.
Yes.
But that large extended family you
The
described
other
in the
one,
beginning,
when they were sent, some of my cousins came back. They were sent to Auschwitz and in different camps. But that was 44, and they were liberated 45. So they were not like years. Some people spent. I have a brother-in-law who was in Auschwitz 3 years. He just passed away. But some of the cousins survived, but the parents, no. The minute you looked a little bit older, you went right away to the gas chambers.
Okay. Do we have another one here, I think? Okay.
You said that you were with other children in a cellar during an internment camp. Were you able to reconnect with any of the other children later in your life?
Well, from the displaced persons camp, or when they were in the cellar
Either is
in
fine.
either one. Were you able to reconnect at any point with any of the children that you were with in the cellar, or even later when you were in the displaced persons camp?
The sad part is that I couldn't, because they stayed in the DP camp and we left. And at that time, it never occurred to me to take their address, because all those people were going to different countries, and we didn't keep in touch with but my two little girlfriends, they passed away. But in DP camp, people were coming and going, so I didn't have close friends.
Right.
But the two little close friends, they didn't survive. The minute they arrived with the mother, they never separated the mother from the child. When a mother was holding a child, they always put you, because the German didn't like chaos, they would be crying and screaming. The mother went, even she was young and she could walk, they put the mother ended to the gas chambers and the child.
Do you have any other questions? Well, people, you have a couple minutes to think about it. Sylvia, I want to ask you, with your niece, Jennifer Roy,
Yes.
you wrote your book, Yellow Star. Oh, my microphone. Thank you. With your niece, Jennifer Roy, you wrote your memoir, your
Yes.
book, Yellow Star. Tell us about the book and what it meant for you to write that book.
We met one time because she lives upstate New York and I lived, and mostly we did it on the telephone. And every time she wrote a chapter, she used to send me. For some reason, I can tell my story, but reading the book, it's very hard for me. So I started to cry reading the chapter. So many things are a little bit wrong, but it's my fault. I never read her chapter, and I said that it's okay, because I couldn't. Even when the book came out, I read it this book you can read in 2 hours. And I said to myself, I should read it again. I have a hard time when it's written down to read, but yet I'm okay to talk about it.
It is, incidentally, it is a marvelous book, Yellow Star. Is my memory correct that you were with us with First Person one other time, 2 years ago?
2 years
and
ago.
I think there was a lady in the audience who had read your book 22 times.
Yes, a little girl.
A little girl. She had read your book.
She was only 8 years old.
That's right, 8 years old. She had read it 22 times.
And she was so shy, she couldn't ask me questions.
Oh. Okay, I think we have another question back here. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your time. You were persecuted for your religion when you were younger. How has your faith changed over the years? Were you able to practice in France, and how is your faith now here in America?
Question is, you were persecuted because of your faith. How's your faith today, and what has changed, if anything, with respect to your faith?
When I was a little girl, I didn't know much about religion, because the ghetto was almost 6 years, so I was not educated, and my parents didn't have time to teach me. I knew in the beginning, when I heard Jewish, I didn't know what it meant, why am I persecuted because I'm Jewish. But when I came really to America, I started to practice the Jewish religion. And I do practice right now too.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you all for your questions. We're gonna close our program in a moment. I'm going to turn back to Sylvia. I want to thank all of you for being with us today. Remind you that we have programs each Wednesday and Thursday through the middle of August. We hope that you can come back this year, but if not, we'll do First Person again next year, so I hope you might make another trip to us. When Sylvia finishes, she's going to leave the stage, and we're going to try to get her up as quickly as possible so that she can sign copies of Yellow Star. That's an opportunity for you to also say hi to her and get your picture taken with her if you'd like to do that. And also when Sylvia finishes, our photographer Joel is going to come up on the stage, and he's going to take a photograph of Sylvia with you as the background. So we want you to stay here. It makes a wonderful photograph. Yep, going to get right to that. Okay. So with that, thank you, Sylvia. It's our tradition at First Person that our first person gets the last word. So
I just feel, because since I start volunteering, and my volunteering at the museum is very important. And being a survivor, I am a witness to the Holocaust. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.